So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to WEATHERTOP, or at least as close a representation of WEATHERTOP as we are able to make in Medieval 2, really. It would be kind of difficult, I think, to make a fully accurate version of WEATHERTOP considering the shape of it that would actually work in a battle like this, but obviously this is going to be a rather interesting battle, quite a long one as well, a 5v3 siege, and obviously this map is dominated by Amon-Sul itself right in its centre. And it is a very defensive position, of course, with one long choke point which leads right up to its summit. Of course, if you get a unit of archers up here, they'll have an enormous amount of range as well, albeit you'll probably want to get good units of archers up here if you bring some lower tier units of archers. Their lower accuracy is likely to be a bit more of a problem. But as you can see, the blue team here are going to be on the defence with their armies already in position, mostly on the higher ground, except for one whose deployment zone means they have to start a little bit further away, but thanks to the roads they should be able to make their way over to the defensive high ground much more quickly. But obviously with 5 armies on the attack, it is going to be all for the defenders to try and do here. They do have... This is probably a map which, just from the look of it, I've never seen this one in action before. It's part of one of the map packs that came out after all, which was recently combined into one big pack. But it does look as though it should be one of the slightly easier maps to defend, purely because Amon-Sul itself is such a easily defended thing, but even so, with 5 armies on the attack, it is going to be difficult for the defenders to truly win this battle, but we shall see. We'll start off over here with the attackers, starting with M1 Breakout, who's going to be playing as Umbar. So Umbar, of course, as far as evil men go, are going to have a lot in terms of quality, and with 2 units, I think. That is 2 units? It should be. 2 units of a Dunaim Shield Guard on the front line. That's certainly going to be the case. One of the better units of spears that you can bring. Obviously very nice armour, shield value, very good stats as well. Perhaps they have more in common actually with some of the elven spears, more so than the other human ones, albeit with a little bit more of a slant on armour rather than defensive skill. Some upgraded Balagire archers, which combined with their bucklers makes them a fantastic unit of archers for skirmishing with enemy archers. Then we have several units of Alcarondas Legion. I think that's 4 units of them based on the spacing there indeed. Obviously, in terms of line infantry, Umbar are able to press home a bit of an advantage. Excuse me. Press home a bit of an advantage against most other factions with this unit. Very nice looking as well. I've always been a big fan of how the Alcarondas Legion look. Then back here we've got a couple of units of Balakith Axe Guard with the armour upgrade as well. Their armour actually, without the upgrade, isn't that good, but one of the things which sets this unit apart from most other axemen of this type, sort of higher end axemen, is the fact their defensive skill is actually not that bad. They can actually beat out units like even the Brotherhood of the Axe or the Westmark Marshals in terms of defensive skill, which means they're less likely to die in melee just from lack of skill. And especially when you upgrade their armour as well, they become certainly my favourite unit of this type. And then back here we have some Naru Sentinels and some Harbingers of Castamere, as well as some Corsair Blackguards as well, who throw a javelin before charging into melee. Not everyone's favourite feature, but the Corsair Blackguards at the very least are one of those javelins capable of doing an awful lot of damage. And then with both of these really elite units here, they have a mostly high quality army, which you would probably expect from Umbar, to be honest with you. And there's probably a couple of hidden units around here as well. I'd be surprised if you didn't see 1 unit of Rangers and perhaps 1 unit of Crossbows as well. Then over here we have Angmar, played by Blue Ranger. He's got a unit of Trolls of Gundabad over here on the farmstead. And then into the middle we have some Blackwatch Legion, which on a map like this, which could get quite choke pointy towards the latter stages, a unit like this could be incredibly important for breaking up the enemy defences. We'll see how quickly or slowly he decides to use them. I'd be a little bit more conservative with them in this case. Some Angmar Marauders, just to give some numbers, and you can see Angmar's line stretches all the way down to there. A lot of Angmar Marauders here, so going for a little bit more of a numbers focus, which should complement Umbar right next to them quite well. Some Guardians of Khan Doom, just for some support as well. Not armour upgraded this unit, but the unit in behind them is, with the Jet Black armour offsetting with the rusted armour of those in front of them. General's Bodyguard is the Witchhound Blackguard, of course a very, very strong unit of infantry indeed. Few factions can boast having a sword and board unit as strong as them. And then over on this side some Trolls of Angmar as well. And there's probably some hidden units of Snaga and Goblin Trackers around here as well. But more of a numbers focused army than perhaps is normal for Angmar. I mean, 2 units of Trolls and the Blackguard is all well and good, but there should be quite a lot of numbers that they have available to them. Then over here we have Killeen, who's going to be playing as Rune. He's got a bit of a noob square going on to try and defend his cannon, which, to be fair, we've seen several times in 0.97 people come out with cavalry specifically to try and kill this thing off. And the Dragon's Breath could be incredibly useful again for breaking up enemy defensive lines and narrow choke points. We'll see if Rune uses that to its advantage, but based on the look of things, I don't think there's going to be an immediate cavalry sally out, certainly not towards Rune anyway, especially with a formation like this. We have some Gamp Rim on either side, we have some Scion Rim at the back, of course the cannon in the middle, and actually we have the new golden variants of the Eastron Guard. They look perhaps a little bit more impressive than they really are with this kind of armour, but they are still pretty decent. I mean, you know, two-handed spears, they're good at zoning out cavalry, they're pretty decent in melee as well, but of course the lack of a shield, and overall they are certainly not as impressive as some of the Elven units which wield this kind of dual-ended glaive. Stuff like the Palace Guard and the Morroquendi Glaive Masters will absolutely butcher a unit like that. Eastron Crossbowmen over here, obviously the stopping power of crossbows. I've mentioned how effective that has been several times by now. The Flag Rim, you know, those maces and those axes for the AP. The Scion Rim also back here as well. He's got some Gnar Rim further forwards, placing some stakes down, but they're a little bit isolated. We'll see if there is a sally forward. And then we move on to Struzis, who's playing as Lothlorien, so he's got some Lorinand archers on the front as well as some Marchwarns of the Wood. There's a hidden unit over here which I would assume to be the Kerenan Rangers. Back over here we have some Lorinand spearmen. So obviously the elves are going to be able to offer a lot of quality and a lot of defensive skill, which does go very nicely actually with Rune's AP, I must say. Lorinand spearmen, we have some Elder Council over here, Lorinand swordmasters, some Lorinand axemen, a very high quality unit of line infantry as well. Some Spears of the Wood, some Kindred of Caliborn, and some Watchers of the Golden Wood. So not too surprising to see Lothlorien go a little bit more heavy with their archers in this sort of situation, because their archer force is so good. We've seen it be so effective in the past. And then finally on the attack we have Dorwinion, played by Mir Ul, who we haven't actually seen Dorwinion in a little while, so it's good to see them back. Morroquendi bows with their poisoned arrows. We have some Elvalin marksmen, some Elvalin infantry in force, so the good, really dependable unit front line of the Elvalin, as well as some Elvalin Vanguard back there. The Morroquendi bows and pikes offering that elven skill, but also the high quality units of Hammer Guard, and of course the Glaive Masters as well. Very, very strong units of infantry that Dorwinion have available to them. There's probably some Kelvin River Patrol around here as well, based on the relative size of the army. I mean, they have gone for a lot of quality in their infantry here again. I think a pretty good, well-balanced force on the attackers here. Good mix of really scary quality, but there's also enough quantity to the point where they won't run out of steam too quickly. Now for the blue team. The faction which has started off the high ground and will need to move along the road quite quickly to link up with his ally is going to be Beshi, who's going to be playing as Gondor. We've seen quite a lot of Gondor lately, which I'm actually pleased about. They really got a bit of a bad rap in the previous patch to this one. They are significantly better now. I still don't hear people be too complimentary of Gondor. Personally, I think they're fine. I don't think they're sort of top tier by any means. But they certainly, in this sort of situation, you know, they can do very well. I think it's more on really open maps where Gondor can struggle a little bit more, because they have no choice but to really be hyper defensive with their spears and their heavily armoured archers, and their cavalry isn't really good enough to be expansive. But in this sort of situation, they are very well positioned to be very good defenders. Some Ravenhelms are here, some Vanguard of King Elisar, the fully upgraded Gondor infantry. We have some fully upgraded axemen of Lasarnak in there as well. Gondor archers, there's some Caer-Andros marksmen in there as well. Quite a lot of Gondor archers actually. We also have some Athelian Rangers, some Pelargia Marines, some Guards of Osgiliath, some Citadel Guard. Over here we have some Wardens of the White Tower, Nimlothian Honour Guard, and some Fountain Guards. So pretty much all of the goodies that you can expect from Gondor. Obviously in a 5v3, the three do tend to be able to bring quite a lot of quality, and that's certainly the case here with the Gondorians. Then, the player who sent me the battle replay, I don't want it. It's an interesting name. He's going to be playing as Arthedain, so another one of the Númenórean Inheritor factions. He has got some Knights of Annúminas here on the front, so he could sally forth and maybe try to go after Rune. I wouldn't recommend it though, because Rune seems to have already set themselves up to defend against that sort of thing. We have a lot of Arthedain pikemen. We have some Dunedain Rangers here on the front. We have some Evendim Spears as well, so even with the funds available to him, the Arthedain player has decided to dip into the militia line of Arthedain a little bit to save some money for elsewhere, which is not a bad idea. Arthedain's militia core is very good actually, for what it is. Arthedain marksman with the armour upgrade as well. Dunedain Peacekeepers are in here as well. I'm a big fan of that unit as well, of course. Nice unit of line infantry which deals a lot of damage with those one-handed axes. Over here we have some more Peacekeepers and more archers. We have a Trebuchet, which could be really devastating on a map like this. Lots of fully upgraded Arthedain men-at-arms. And then back here we have some Annúminas Gate Guards, as well as a couple of units of dismounted Knights of Annúminas. So more of a workman-like army this from Arthedain. Certainly less of the flashy units that Gondor just had, but this could be a good thing. Arthedain just being the solid core to the flashier armies around him. And speaking of flashy armies, when you have a lot of money as in Ladris, such as my doppelganger has here, we're going to be seeing, I think, a good performance from Ladras here, because this is exactly the sort of situation where they tend to rack up the kills just because of their quality. 2 units of Elder Spearmen, both of the crown jewels of their infantry force as well, the Gwaith'i Arthand and the Gwaith'i Myrdain. We have some Noratuno Warriors, some Imladris Guardians without the armour upgrade actually. Noratuno Warriors, of course, a little bit better in melee as well, so hopefully we'll get to see that. Imladris Sentries, Elder Lancers, some God Helim with their Silverthorn arrows. We have some Elder Archers, some Swords of Rivendell, again without the armour upgrade. The Archers of Rivendell do have the armour upgrade, however, so maybe he's thinking that he's going to have to engage in some skirmish fighting. Bruinen River Wards, Imladris Guardians, some Elder Swordmasters, and then finally the mighty Gwaith'i Rockdor, some of the strongest knights in the game, if not the strongest, with a lance in hand. But I think without further ado, we should begin. Now there are several ways up, of course. Dorwinion could cycle right around the outside of Amon Sul and attack from the rear, which I think would probably be the best idea. The best thing the attackers can do when they have an advantage of 2 armies over the defending 3, of course, is to try and spread out the defenders as much as possible. Now the defenders could counteract this by just camping all of their armies on top of Amon Sul, we shall see. But I think I will actually make a little bit of a cut here, purely because I think it's going to take a little while for the attackers to sort of figure out how they want to approach this. The Gondorians, of course, need to rush into the defensive position as well. I would certainly hope that the defenders sort of defend a little bit further forwards to try and defend this quote-unquote outer layer of the fortress. We shall see. I'll rejoin when the battle begins in earnest. So we do have the initial little scraps going on here as the Knights of Numinous are coming out all on their lonesome to try and interfere with the advance of the attackers. But the problem with doing this when you only have 1 unit of cavalry, even when it's as tough as the Knights of Numinous, I think quite possibly the tankiest unit of regular cavalry in the game, they're still going to be very easy to zone out when there's just 1 unit. If you had several units of cavalry buzzing around here, they could be able to find some weak spots in the Umbar formation. But as it is, with the Adunheim Shield Guard out here, and of course Umbar, they do have some Corsair Crossmen as well. The Belagair Archers, while they won't do damage immediately, they'll still be able to put the Knights of Numinous under a decent amount of pressure. So I'm not really sure that the Knights of Numinous are really going to be able to achieve all that much here. You can see that already several of them have died for not really a great deal of return. The Adunheim Shield Guard, ideal for blocking any sort of advance. You can see also the Trolls of Gundabad are coming over here as well, maybe with the hope that if the Knights of Numinous do get stuck in melee with something, they can come charging in and break some horses' backs as well. You can see here Umbar maybe taking their eye off the ball a little bit. The Belagair Archers sticking out of formation just a bit now, with the close proximity of the Adunheim Shield Guard and the Naru Naru Sentinels. There shouldn't be too much to worry about there. But at the very least, it is quite an annoyance for Umbar here to have to deal with. So we'll see if that proves to be of any significance. The Eldoran Lancers, meanwhile, charging down the hill into the Barrow-wights, with the Barrow-wights, of course, several HP, so they're not going to be too worried about taking these charges initially. It will start to take an impact if they just get continually cycle charged like this, but the Eldoran Lancers may very well start to lose a few unit models as well. Indeed, you can see them starting to drop away as well. It's really not worth your while to try and deal with the Barrow-wights like that. Some Evendom Spearmen at the top of the hill here, especially seeing as the Barrow-wights are still quite a long way away from the supporting units. Like, if they come in here all alone, then they'll be relatively easy to deal with. Meanwhile, over here you can see the Trebuchet coming in, trying to snipe out the Dragon's Breath cannon, and here comes the cannon. Is it going to be able to hit the Trebuchet? Oof, very, very close. No, it did actually hit because of the splash damage, the minor splash damage the cannon does. It was able to kill it off. And of course, this is the problem, that a Trebuchet, even as accurate as it is still maybe not the best tool for trying to deal with enemy artillery like this. And I can pretty much guarantee here that this is going to be the other one. Nope, hitting the already broken down one. Knights of Numinous, only 15 of them left. They must have taken a pretty reckless decision. I think at some point they must have charged into something like the pikes or the spears. So not a brilliant start here for the defenders. Their artillery is already on the verge of being destroyed. Still just about hanging on. The Knights of Numinous are depleted. The Eldoran Lancers haven't really been able to get out into the open field beyond the Barrow-wights. They're continuing to charge in and out, but they still haven't really made a big impact on the Barrow-wights, performing their role as a meat shield adequately, although there isn't really much meat on them. They're ghosts. So Trebuchet still continuing to fire. Still not destroyed though. I mean, the upshot of this is at least the Dragon's Breath will not be able to utilise its ammunition on the infantry as much, considering this is how it's going. This is unfortunate here. If the Knights of Numinous had continued to follow through on that charge against the Trolls, then they would have skewered quite a lot of those trolls. I think this is a misconception a lot of people have. The fact that trolls are not a hard counter to cavalry. Like, if you charge into trolls with a unit of cavalry like knights or the Eldarenway Lancers, you will be able to skewer a good amount of them. But unfortunately here, the Eldarenway Lancers just sort of walked into melee with them, which is the last thing you want to do, because in sustained melee, yes, the trolls will do enormous damage to cavalry. But if you can charge in, you can do a lot of damage to them very quickly. Unfortunately, I think Arthedain lost their bottle, and Imladris just didn't execute very well on that particular charge. Dragon's Breath is over here. The Knights of Numinous are still alive, however, and as I've said in the past, even a unit of depleted Knights is capable of doing some damage, and they need to, honestly, because the Knights of Numinous haven't really achieved anything as of yet. But it does look as though they're going to be able to charge into the Blackwatch Legion here. They do get their Lancers out and down, so that's going to be a decent charge there. They need to continue to do this in Angmar's backline if they want to be successful, but unfortunately here, there wasn't enough of them. They charged into the centre mass of the unit, and they've managed to get entrapped. And there goes the Arthedain General, which is not a good thing. Like, this has not been a good start from the defenders. At the very least, they can fall back on their defensive positions to try and make up for the losses they've already taken. But it's definitely not been a successful opening salvo by the defenders. The attackers have handled this very well. All the attackers have needed to do is react to what the defenders have been doing, and they've done it very well. Meanwhile, Umbar are over here. You can see that up on the hill, the Archers of Rivendell, the thud of the runic cannon. Umbar are moving forward. Umbar, however, need to be a little bit careful here, because they are in full range, or full view I should say, of the Gondorian and Imladris archers, and quite a few here of the Umbar forces are just not well armoured or shielded at all. The Corsair Crossmen are the ideal target for these archers to go after. You can see immediately they're taking grievous losses. I think Umbar has maybe jumped the gun on their attack a little bit. I think maybe the attackers would have been better off waiting for everyone to be in position. You can see here that Dorween is going right the way around the outer edge of the map, trying to avoid the archers as much as possible before advancing along this road. You can see also that Lothlorien, I don't really know what Lothlorien are doing. They're going the wrong way. They're moving backwards. They need to be ready to assist their allies in attacking. They need to be ready to go up this hill. It's no good thinking that you're the most high quality army, so you need to save yourself to the end. Your allies need you now. And you can see here that Angmar and Rune are now also moving forward, but yeah, even so, if I were Umbar, I still would have waited a little while before moving in like this. At the very least now, though, their Belagar archers are in place, and they should be able to skirmish relatively well, actually, with the Archers of Rivendell, with those bucklers and the armour upgrade especially. In terms of damage, the elves, of course, still outpace the men from Umbar, but at the very least they're now answering the Elven challenge at range. Those Corsair Crossmen have taken huge losses, actually. The Archers of Rivendell now going to retreat from the front line, and I would imagine, yeah, the Gondorians are starting to move forwards a little bit more now. I mean, the Gondorians, they need to respond to these archers somehow. I mean, it's no good just retreating from them and allowing the attackers to get some value back from their archers by freely shooting into their men. The veterans of Osgiliath are firing back, which is good to see, but I would also move up a unit of standard Gondor archers to really pile the pressure on Umbar's skirmishers. Meanwhile, down over here, certainly a pretty big assault getting ready to come forward, actually. You can see there that the Eastron warriors and the Barrow-wights moving forward, but a pretty hefty downhill charge there from the Eldarenway Lancers. That will have picked up quite a lot of kills for them. But honestly, at this point, I would probably move them down this way. I mean, you can see there that the Elves of Lothlorien are sort of menacing this side, but they sort of move backwards. Now they're going this way. I don't really see the logic here. Sort of beating about the bush, really. Here you can see the Evendim Spearmen forming up the initial front line, but the Evendim Spearmen are going to need a lot more support to try and hold this particular line. The Trolls of Angmar will absolutely butcher units of Spear Militia. So they're going to need some help. Now, the Dunedain Peacekeepers would be a decent choice for that because of their heightened damage. The Arthedain Men-at-Arms wouldn't be brilliant either. This is where Arthedain's sort of... their army wasn't really focused around the amount of damage it could deal in melee. It was certainly, like I said, a more workmanlike army from them. And that's not really ideal when you're talking about Trolls, because Trolls can deal with line infantry, standard line infantry pretty well. But the Dunedain Peacekeepers are coming in now, and they should be enough to put some pretty decent pressure here on the Trolls. The Eastron Warriors did take quite a lot of damage from that charge, but they are going to come in to try and support. The Evendim Archers are also in an ideal position, so trying to get some good value from those Militia Archers, which you will be able to against a unit as vulnerable to missile fire as Eastron Warriors. Eastron Warriors pretty decent in melee with their swords. It's a very interesting sort of offhand sword they have, sort of like a mix between a scimitar and a tonfa. But they are in here. And the Evendim Spearmen, especially when they're backed up by Dunedain Peacekeepers, will be able to hold this position relatively easily. The Evendim Archers trying to do some extra damage to the Barrow Wights, but of course with their many hit points, it's going to take quite a while for a unit like the Evendim Archers to be able to make too much of an impact there. Corsair Crossbows taking a lot of damage still. Balaguer Archers are here still firing away, trying to do their thing. What are they going after, I wonder? So they're going after the Archers of Rivendell. Obviously seeing that the Elves are more lightly armoured than the Gondorians that are on top of this hill, so they're trying to go after this target, which is wise. But with the armour upgrade and with their better abilities with their bows, the Elves should still be fairly comfortable in a skirmish fight against the Balaguer Archers, especially if they're being backed up by the veterans of Osgiliath on the other side. Gondor Archers are also making their way over now. See here some Elvelyn marksmen moving forward from Dorwinion. There are some Gondor Archers over on this side as well, some Fountain Guards. So Imladris and Gondor seem to be sharing the workload between the two of them. Here on the northern end of Weathertop. But in the south it seems to be mostly Arthedain defending this one choke point, which Rune and Angmar are really threatening. And then there's a bit of Imladris over here. Honestly, this choke point over here is probably the one that's most vulnerable. And unfortunately, Lothlorien doesn't seem to be seizing the initiative at all, which is kind of sad to see, really. Spears of the Wood are coming forward now, but the Gwythi Rockdor are chasing down the March Wardens of the Wood. But they're going to try and get away. I think they realise, and that's probably the right thing to do as well, just sort of break off. Try and make sure that you don't get caught in melee with the Lorenan Spearmen, especially obviously those heavy Elven Spears can be pretty damaging against cavalry, even knights, in a prolonged melee. Especially when you're going to be shot by arrows as well, the poison arrows making their way into the backs of the Gwythi Rockdor. But they do turn around, and that will of course bring the shields into play as well. They're going to come back for another attempt off the charge. What are they going to do here? They're going to charge into the spears, which is bold to say the least, but I mean it was a very good charge. They hit right on the narrow point where they were most condensed, so that's going to carry that energy through that unit quite nicely. But they're going to need to do more of that if they want to get good value with their knights. Certainly they need to do better with their knights than Arthedain managed with the Knights of Illuminas. Spears of the Wood are going to take a full frontal charge, but the spears do have the ability to reflect a bit of that charge back, so one of those knights did actually end up dying from that, and the Spears of the Wood managed to hold their ground quite well actually, so the Gwythi Rockdor need to be a little bit more careful. Like, charging right into the front of spears isn't really the best idea. Meanwhile, continuing assault here as the Trolls are coming back once again, but there's Dunedain Peacekeepers in there. The Barrow Wights are here also, both units of Barrow Wights actually, and they're continuing to get support from Rune. Some Eastron Guard now moving forward. Again, not the best at dealing with missile fire, but they're pretty decent in melee, especially against units like Militia. They should clean up really in terms of kills, but for Arthedain the main problem here is going to be the Trolls continuing to rip and tear their way through this front line. Meanwhile, fire arrows coming from on low. The Loknar Rim trying to skirmish with the Noritino warriors. That's not going to go too well for them. Certainly not a unit which is going to be that good at skirmishing with elves. The God Helim are also up on this hill as well. The Gwythi Rockdor are now, seeing that Lothlorien is adopting a more defensive posture, they're going to instead go after Rune, who have left their flank a little bit more exposed. And indeed there's nothing really over here that will be able to stop the Gwythi Rockdor from just having their way with Rune. Unfortunately for Killeen, all of these Lokflag Rim are ripe for the taking for those Elven Knights, and they're going to continue to charge in and out, I would guess. Some Angmar Marauders now coming up the hill, perhaps seeing that Arthedain are probably the weakest in terms of their infantry force today. Rune and Angmar are being quite aggressive here, trying to force their way up onto this plateau as quickly as they possibly can. But the Dunedain Peacekeepers on the front line, they're going to be able to do a ton of damage to these low tier units. Like, the Trolls are in here, but I can't help feeling as though they need some quality on the front line here, the attackers, to really make this stick, because the Dunedain Peacekeepers are brilliant at hoovering up lower tier units, and their damage will also stand them in good stead against the Trolls as well, so a very good unit to have in that situation. Gwythi Rockdor getting a decent charge into the Carmel Shadow Guard. I was about to say they were going to narrowly avoid the Scion Rim there, but they don't. Most unfortunate for them. Dragon's Breath is kind of in position. More and more of Angmar's army is pouring forward. A lot of Marauders. There's the Blackwatch Legion as well. Let's go and see how things are getting on with Umbar. Umbar, it looks as though they're trying to get point blank to shoot Gondor, but Gondor are certainly not going to allow them to do that. Like, that was always going to end with Umbar running back down the hill. But of course now the Citadel Guard turning their backs to the Belagar Archers. Their shields are going to be taken out of the equation, and perhaps a few more kills racked up for the Belagar. But Umbar, you can see they are right up against the cliff now. They're sort of biding their time all of a sudden. Also, our Blackguard's taking some hits. The D9 Shield Guard are back there. But for the time being, Gondor are quite happy to just sort of sit here and try and absorb some of this Umbar range pressure. Gondor archers firing from up here as well, getting some good hits there onto the Balagai archers. Meanwhile, Dorwinian also preparing their own advance. The Gondor archers up here on the hill. There are only one unit of them really. Combination of Fountain Guard and Eldarenway Spearmen is a very strong front line, but you can see here Dorwinian is not too eager to face them in a straight up fight. They're going to try and whittle them down first before sending in their units. I mean, there's a lot of Elvalin and Morroquendi pikes, but I feel as though something with a little bit more panache is going to be needed to really make an advance like this stick. It's primarily Gondor over here actually, so maybe the Elvalin Hammer Guard would be a good centre to any advance that they decide to try and strike up. Meanwhile, a huge force, primarily Angmar at this point, presumably because Rune are busy trying to micro against the Gwythi Rockdor, who have certainly been used more wisely than the Knights of Illuminas here. Again, I'm not entirely sure what Lothlorien is hoping to accomplish here. They're just sort of sat here. Their allies at this point are all contributing to the assault. Lothlorien are not really doing that. They're poking them with the March Wards of the Wood, but that's not really going to achieve all that much. Their army is far too far away. I would be shouting at him in the channels at this point to try to at least move in with your archers, try and put some pressure on that choke point, because at the moment he's not contributing to help his team whatsoever. Meanwhile, Flagrim are now also on the front line. Rune still offering a bit of support. You can see the Arthedain marksmen taking up the position the archers had previously. The Evendim archers are on the front line. The problem that Arthedain is starting to run into now, though, is that their militia is starting to break. Their front line is starting to waver a little bit in the face of the sheer numbers from Angmar. But there are some more Arthedain men-at-arms. And Arthedain, to be fair, the benefit of going for an army like this is you're always going to have more men available to send into the front line. And with those Arthedain men-at-arms coming forward with their armour upgrade, they should be able to hold this line for a decent amount of time longer. Trebuchet is there. I wonder if Umbar are moving into melee yet. They aren't. They're still sort of trying to draw Gondor onto their archers, which, to be fair, is working. Gondor is playing into their hands a little bit here. I think because Gondor are not too eager to use up more of their arrows on the Balagai archers, which I can understand, but it's kind of an interesting situation to be in for the Gondorians. Meanwhile, Dorwinian coming forward in force quite quickly, to be honest with you, so coming into the Eldarenway Spearmen and the Fountain Guard, you'll scarcely find the scarier phalanx in the game, and especially with the AP from the Fountain Guard, these units of Elvalin are going to be thoroughly outclassed. The Morroquendi pikes will try to outrange the Fountain Guard, but I don't really think it's going to go too well. So Dorwinian are going to be held up on this front line for quite a while, I think, unless they're able to get something like the Keldwin River Patrol into position to throw some javies, or start retargeting their archers onto this front line. You can see, I think, smelling a bit of weakness, Gondor are going to send in a unit of Axemen of Lasarnak to the front line as well. Extra AP, which is going to be very useful against the purple-clad Elvelyn. Very good moves being made, I have to say. Gondor archers still doing their thing. That was the unmistakable thud of the Dragon's Breath, and that was also a very decent hit as well, I must say. That was only a grazing hit against the Dunedain Rangers, but right into the centre mass there of the Arthedain forces. The pikes, there's a bit of routing going on the front line there from some Elvalin spearmen. Even the Dunedain peacekeepers are not really fancying their chances there. However, very eager to hold on to this front line, I must say, the defenders, because the Gwythi Myrdain are now on the front line, and with their very high damage, which is AP, they will be able to do quite a lot of damage. But the problem that they may run into here is that the Dragon Fire is ripping a hole through that Arthedain section of the line. The God Helim are now starting to fire away with their high mass arrows. That's a big rout as well. The Evendim archers routing off. The Dunedain peacekeepers depleted and are routing off. The Trebuchet is out of ammunition, so the crew is over here to try and plug the gap. I mean, as long as they continue to commit more men to this front line, they will still be able to hold on to this position. One of the huts there getting utterly levelled by the Dragon Fire. But the problem is they will still continue to take a lot of losses if they keep defending a choke point which is so open to all of these skirmishes, especially from Rune, the crossbows and the Dragon's Breath cannon proving to be a very nasty set of tools. The Gwythi Rockdor at this point have taken a lot of attritional casualties, but they've already done a lot of heavy lifting for Imladris, and the Eldarenway Lancers are also doing much the same. Eastron crossbows and Angmar Marauders coming back down. Obviously, there's always the risk of friendly fire, which will rout your own men. Another unit of Arthedain pikemen trying to hold on to the front line, but they're already shaken. You can see here that morale shocks are the order of the day. The Arthedain marksmen using their fire arrows to try and break the attacking forces as well. Obviously a bit of friendly fire is likely to send all of those orcs and Easterlings routing. Meanwhile, still Umbar not too eager to advance right into the jaws of that Gondorian front line. Perhaps seeing what is happening to his allies, but again, much like Lothlorien, at this point Umbar isn't really doing anything. Like, just because they're a little bit closer to the defensive lines doesn't really mean that they're contributing anything. Like Lothlorien, it's a little bit more obvious that they're just sort of sat there hoping that their allies take the losses for them. But for Umbar here, they are here at least putting some pressure on the front line, but they're not actually engaging in any way, because their archers are mostly gone and depleted at this point. So, you know, this kind of tactic is no longer going to yield anything for you, really. You know, trying to absorb a little bit more ammunition is all you can take, but you know, that's going to take time, and it's time that their allies may not have, honestly. Angmar, Rune and Dorwinion are all on the receiving end of some pretty nasty damage at this point. You can see the Elvelyn are really struggling here. The AP provided by the Gondorians, and then the solid defensive line provided by the Eldarenwe. No way through for Dorwinion. You can see, however, that there are the Elvelyn Hammerguard on the front line. So, I mean, definitely taking into account their AP, that's a dangerous foe for both of these factions to face, honestly. The problem is, though, the Phalanx and the Fountain Guard will keep them at arm's length. That, yeah, we do have the Keldon River Patrol, which is a good sight to see. You know, they will be able to do some damage, and that could be the difference that Dorwinion has been waiting for, so they can then try and flood forwards onto the upper plateau. But the defenders are doing a pretty good job here of just denying the attackers' entry thus far. Although I say that, you can now see that the Trolls have been able to get in behind the lines somewhat. There's a little bit of chaos starting to erupt, so Angmar and Rune starting to make up some ground. The Dragon Fire causing a lot of routing, causing a lot of chaos. I think ultimately that is going to yield some results eventually. Meanwhile, Imladris are still making a nuisance of themselves with their cavalry, charging in there to the Carmel's Shadowbows, trying to deal with some attacking rangers. However, in doing so, they have charged right into the Loxion Rim, so they're probably going to be made to pay for that, to be honest with you. A unit of heavily armoured spears like the Scion Rim. Well, I mean, they only killed one. Well, they routed them, though, so there is that. The Chosen are there as well, so Runes still have an army back here which can be used for later. Forward come Angmar and Rune, continuing to just pour in with their Marauders. The Gamprim are now forward with their AP. All of those Guardians of Khan Doom, the Blackwatch Legion, bulldozing through. Where are the Blackwatch Legion actually? Did they get committed? I'm sure they did. The God Halim are on the front line as well. I mean, it's an interesting situation actually, because the defenders are committed so much to this front line that they kind of need to continue to defend it, honestly. Dunedain Rangers firing in there. Another unit of Dunedain Rangers. The phrase too big to fail, I think, kind of applies here. Now Umbar may be thinking about charging in, and I would at this point, seeing the ground that Rune and Angmar have made. You need to put some pressure on elsewhere in the battlefield, and I think the time has come for Umbar to start joining the assault, certainly. With Dorwinion already putting pressure on the other side, I mean, it is interesting, because I feel as though the defenders, they can't really retreat back up to the summit of WEATHERTOP just yet, because they have too much of their stuff committed. They may have overcommitted to these defences, and that may prove to be a problem in the long run. Poison Arrow whistling by, as the Morikwendi bows are now in position, and all of a sudden, with the support of those javelins, Dorwinion's odds have improved significantly on the front line, and eventually they may very well make it through, but I feel as though Dorwinion will be pretty heavily depleted from the ordeal that they've had to suffer over here, very well contained by the defenders thus far. Meanwhile, some routing Gamprim going a little bit too far behind enemy lines, and with all of these Gondorian reinforcements making their way over, that is the signal that Umbar needs to advance in. Oh, and unfortunately, just no courage whatsoever. Bottling it. Like, Gondor are sending over reinforcements to try and save the front line over there because of the courage of Rune and Angmar to move in, and Umbar is just not reciprocating that. They're running away with their tail between their legs there. That's very disappointing to see. Meanwhile, over here, Eldarenwe Swordmasters coming in, the Dismounted Knights of Numisite. The opportunity is disappearing pretty rapidly here for the attackers. Like, Rune and Angmar have done what they can, but now their attack is falling to bits because nowhere else, other than Dorwinian have the defenders been under any sort of pressure, so they're free to just filter over as many reinforcements as they need. Over here, like, look at this defence over here. It's literally just one unit, pretty much, maybe two, you could say. And the entire Lothlorien army is still just dragging its heels. That's just terrible, honestly. Terrible play. Swords of Rivendell fighting on the front line as well, so still the defenders able to group up, do a good job in tandem, helping one another out. Arthedain was in trouble, so both Imladris and Gondor have come over in numbers and halted the advance of Angmar and Rhûn. And there you can see dismounted Knights of Annúminas doing their thing on the front line. They could probably do with a little bit of help though. They probably advanced a little bit too far all on their lonesome. But I think all the units that would reinforce them are a little bit further back, so maybe we will see them in just a moment. Axemen of Nasarnak are there. Dunedain Rangers out of ammunition, which is always a good sign for the... actually, no, they're not. They just pulled out their bows once again. Arthedain Marks. It's always a good sign when you've used all your ranger ammunition as the defenders. It's a good sign that you've managed to do quite a lot of damage. Pelagia Marines moving forward now, so they're going to be able to harass the Umbarim, who are still... I don't know what Umbar's waiting for. Like, it's one of the things that I'm always perplexed about when I see assaults like this. It's like, what exactly are you waiting for? Like, you're not going to get a good opportunity if you continue to wait, because your allies will be dead and then you will be the one focused down. And then all of your conservation will have been for nothing. Meanwhile, some Gondor infantry joining the front line, fully upgraded, but I don't think that's going to matter. Dorwinian, with their continued pressure, with their good combined arms assault, with the pikes, the infantry, and then the support of the javelins and the poison arrows as well, it looks as though Dorwinian are actually going to get some results as time goes on here. A combination of elves and men there. Just like in the days of the last alliance, but the Morroquendi bows continuing to rain down poison arrows, but it's not really very well aimed shots, this. I mean, they're going after the vanguard of King Elisar, which is fair enough. They're unshielded, but multiple HP, very well armoured. You're not getting good hits on them either. You may as well save your ammunition for something a little bit more worthwhile. Meanwhile, finally, Umbar, I think more so, they didn't really attack this defensive line. They were more drawn out because of the Pelagia Marines. This might be an opportunity, honestly, for Gondor to counter-attack. We've seen how unwilling Umbar has been so far to move forward, and I think once again we're going to see Umbar retreat. Oof. I've got nothing good to say about that. Like, especially if Angmar and Rhûn end up getting utterly defeated because of this, it will be most unfortunate. You can see here that Lothlorien, they're so eager to avoid any kind of losses from the defending archers, which, when you're on the attack, you're not going to be able to avoid taking arrow fire. It's just going to happen. It's a fact of life. And they're going to try and be as if... They're going to try and keep as many of their men, or elves I should say, alive. But in doing so, they're going to be taking so long to do anything. That, I mean, I feel sorry for Angmar and Rhûn, honestly, because they have moved forward. They've been the ones that have been harassed the most by the Imladris cavalry. They've also been the ones that have been most aggressive. And they're being made to pay for it, really, because two of their allies are just far too slow. Not enough courage. And that's disappointing to see. Morroquendi bows, firing from on high with those poison arrows, still not really making too much of an impact on the vanguard of King Elisar. Dorwinian, at the very least, is contributing to their team, and they're probably the ones that are most likely to actually force their way up onto the plateau, which is maybe what Umbar is hoping for, but I mean, it's not exactly the most honourable way to do things now, is it? Citadel Guard are also there. I mean, Dorwinian, to be fair, they probably will manage to make their way up here, but they are going to be very depleted when all is said and done. Morroquendi Glade Masters coming forward. There's still some pikes back there as well. With the Glade Masters on the front line, this should be the final nail in this defence's coffin, and Dorwinian probably needs to be the one to pull their team out of the fire here. They need to get a good advance going, get a bit of momentum, because I feel as though Angmar and Rhûn, I mean, they're trying to make something happen here, to be fair, with all of these units. Like the Scion Rim and the Shadow Guard are now on the front line, but it's mainly Rhûn over here at this point, I think. Angmar mostly gone now. There's the Carmel's Shadow Bow, so the Runic Rangers coming in, as well as the Nar Rim. what's left of Angmar moving forward as well, albeit that's not very much. I mean, Rune are going to be... they're doing a pretty decent job at doing some damage with their skirmishers. Those shadow bows in the Narum are going to be peeling away at the defending manpower, but... I don't know, I'm not convinced. Archers of Rivendell are there. Arthedain marksmen just being thrown into the front line. I mean, to be fair, the defenders, in order to make all this worthwhile, do need to destroy Angmar and Rune here. Otherwise, it's still going to be pretty hairy for them as the battle continues. Meanwhile, finally...
Our ally lies dead, slain by the enemy. We must help his men avenge him.
Well, there goes the Imladris general, the Gwaithir Myrdain finally succumbing. Finally, Lorien are moving in to actually attack, but with the Imladris Guardians and Elder Runway Spearmen here. Javelins are here, but again, bit of a half-hearted move. I mean, when the defensive line is this weak, I would always be really tempted to just send forward all of my infantry in one go to just smash through as quickly as possible. As it is, Imladris is going to be fairly pleased with the fact that they're going to be able to hold Lothlorien at bay for just a little bit longer. Imladris, of course, of all of the Elven factions, have the slight edge in melee. Ooh. I mean, the Dragon's Breath cannon managing to find a shot at least and actually managing to rout off a portion of those Arthedain marksmen. Every little helps over here, but you can see here the Archers of Rivendell continuing to fire away as well. Still, Rune's trying to make something happen, and to be fair, Rune are making something happen. All of the support from their ranged units, their rangers, what's left of their crossbows and their Narim, doing damage to that blob. I'm not sure whether it's going to be enough in the long run, but they certainly will have killed enough to have made their army worthwhile. Meanwhile, Umbar finally here are on the front line, but again, only committing forward one unit at a time. Like, they need to start sending forward something a little bit more substantial. The Marksmen of Caer Andros are there, the Pelargir Marines are there, but I'm very confused as to what Umbar actually wants to achieve here. Like, all of their allies, barring Lothlorien of course, have moved forward and taken damage on the chin, weathered the storm, but Umbar seems like he doesn't want to do that. Meanwhile, Dorwinion getting around the side with some Morroquendi bows, but immediately their advance is halted by the onrushing Wardens of the White Tower and Ravenhelms. There's also some Erenvorn axemen over here. AP though they may be, they're a very low-end axemen, so against professional soldiery like the Ravenhelms, they're going to be in a good amount of trouble. Keldon River Patrol are there. Morroquendi pikes trudging forwards. Some Elvelyn Vineguard pushing in. The Nandor Glade Guard have come forward as well with their AP. Very, very damaging, but not the most survivable unit. There's only 13 Hammer Guard left. Wonder where the Glade Masters went. Kind of hard to tell them apart at this kind of range. Got to be around here somewhere though. Those are Morroquendi bows. Fountain Guard coming forward, and they'll be able to close the jaws on the Erenvorn axemen. They'll rout very, very quickly, being the low-end axemen that they are. They share more in common mechanically really with Orc axemen than they do with most other human axemen. But then they're not really fighting men, they're just lumbermen, to give them their old name. Shaken immediately, and now they're caught between two of the stronger Gondor infantry units. And that's going to be bad news for them. Very few units in the game would relish the chance to take on the Fountain Guard, and the Erenvorn axemen are certainly not one of them. That's going to be the end of them pretty quickly, and then Gondor could start to wrap up the line, and then Dorwinion might be in a little bit of trouble, especially with more reinforcements on the way over, veterans of Osgiliath, as well as some dismounted Knights of Illuminus as well. Not getting any easier here for the attackers. You can see here that Rune, I think their attack is starting to run out of steam a little bit, like their skirmishers are still doing a decent job. Here you can see, as the frames start to abandon me, in and amongst all these corpses. The Carmel's Chosen have managed to find their way into some of the archers, but they're getting shot in the back by some Dunedain Rangers, which is probably going to be the end of them, to be honest with you. Archers of Rivendell running around. Bruinen River Wards coming forward, Norretina Warriors, Dunedain Rangers. So you can see that Lothlorien have taken long enough that reinforcements have managed to cycle their way over here. And Lothlorien should still be able to make their way through here, but it's going to take them far longer than it should have done. In come the Bruinen River Wards. Archers of Rivendell still able to get some good hits onto the Lorenan Swordmasters. Norretina Warriors are here. Dunedain Rangers starting to fire as well. Lothlorien still very spread out. Caer Amroth Rangers firing away with their body piercing. Dunedain Rangers, I think they're trying to get into a good position to shoot into that blob over there, which is fair enough. A nice blob of elven infantry is an irresistible target to a unit of rangers after all. Defeat is a certainty at this point for the runic forces on the front line, which is not too surprising. They were always only going to last so long considering the hand they got dealt. Meanwhile, Umbar continuing to push in. They've got some Balakith Axemen or Axe Guard on the front line at this point, taking some damage from the Marksman of Caer Andros from the side, but they're just not committing forward enough units all at once here, and going in small waves like this, I've said before, is not the best idea. And I stand by that in this situation, because Umbar are going to be bleeding more manpower than they need to over here. The Nimlothian Honour Guard and the Guards of Osgiliath are going to be able to quite comfortably hold them at bay unless more of the Umbar forces come forward. The Alcarondas Legion actually have managed to get in behind the line. They need to get in here and surround this defensive line and start doing some damage. You see here the Pelagia Marines going to be throwing their javelins into their backs, the Marksmen of Caer Andros, some arrows into their fronts. But if they can charge in here, surround this Gondor front line, all of a sudden it looks far less stable. The Guards of Osgiliath in particular will struggle in that situation. More Axe Guard. So finally Umbar has the opportunity to give the attackers some momentum. Meanwhile, Dorwinion, who looked as though they were going to be the ones to do that, unfortunately it looks as though their army has, they've committed forward basically everything at this point, but with another unit of Fountain Guard coming forward to help shore up the line, I think that was kind of the, and the Dismounted Knights of Illuminus, that was the death knell for Dorwinion, I think. Like, Keldwyn River Patrol are being matched up against Dismounted Knights of Illuminus. That's always a bad sign. But at the very least, Dorwinion tried. They made the effort to attack at the same time as their allies over on the other side, and that cannot be said for all of the attackers here, unfortunately. As I've said before, even if you don't want to attack, if your allies do it, you need to go with them. Otherwise, your approach is going to be all broken up, and you're just making it a little bit easier for the defenders. You're giving the defenders an opportunity to come back into the game, because when it's a 3v5, the defenders are always going to start at a disadvantage. That man has a chainmail face. Eastron Crossmen still have ammunition, amusingly enough, and Rune are still continuing to fight, but Arthedain Pikemen on the front line, there's still some Dismounted Knights of Illuminus giving them the business. Axum of Lasarnak are there also. I imagine those Imladra sentries racked up the kills in that situation as well. It's exactly the sort of situation where they are at their very best. Arthedain Marksmen here, the Gamprim surrounded. There's still a few Carmels chosen in and amongst things. The Norrentino warriors able to put those slightly higher melee abilities to good use in this situation as well. I don't think Angmar really have anything left. However, you can see here that I think now, the defenders, I think now they're choosing now to retreat, I think, which is probably a good time to cut their losses. I mean, this does of course mean that Rune, technically speaking, will still be alive in spite of all the trouble they've gone through. But you can see here that Lothlorien have managed to push through as a result of the very small defence that was sent to try and stop them. Should really have been destroyed sooner, and it would have been. But alas, here you can see that the Pelagia Marines charging in, meeting the challenge of the Balakith Axe Guard. Balakith Axe Guard should be just fine. I mean, the Pelagia Marines can look after themselves in melee, but they're definitely not like a powerhouse by any means. Still, the Nimlothian Honour Guard are fighting on the front line. I think they are going to lose eventually, however, alongside the Guards of Osgiliath, but they'll be able to take a good amount of the Alcarondas Legion with them, at the very least. Meanwhile, are Dorwinion going to be victorious? I don't think they are. With the Fountain Guard here, and Andor Glade Guard are gone. I mean, it takes, that killing off the Glade Masts and the Elbel and Hammer Guard must have taken a lot out of the defenders to stop Dorwinion here, but I think Dorwinion is going to join Angmar as a faction which is no longer of this world. I think Dorwinion are actually trying to save a couple of their units so they can actually play a part in the final stages of this battle. Trying to trudge their way out of there. Dismounted Knights of Illuminus are also here. What have we here? Gondor Archers. Victory is a distinct possibility. There's one Nandor Glade Guard over there. Gondor Archers are not brilliant in melee, but when it's 1 versus 50, you can always feel fairly confident. Marksmen of Caer Andros, defeat is a distinct possibility, as you would expect. The Balakith Axe Guard finally destroying them. They're good in melee, the Marksmen of Caer Andros, but not this good. There you can see the defenders starting to make their way up onto Weathertop itself. Eldraine Swordmasters and Broyne and Riverwards retreating. Dismounted Knights of Anubis and Arthedain Pikemen routing off after this front line was largely abandoned. The Eastron Crossbowmen, meanwhile, getting peppered from on high by the Eldraine archers, so they're going to be killed off ruthlessly. There go the Dunedain Rangers, Lorenan Swordmasters moving through. So Rune's still alive. Just. Lorenan Axemen over here as well. Karen Amroth Rangers used up their ammunition earlier on, I think. They're going to be pulling out those two-handed Elven Blades. Illidan still continuing to fire away. The Eldraine archers, obviously a very good unit of archers indeed. And they double as very good infantry as well. The Anubis Gate Guards trudging past, the Athenian Rangers doing the same. Still some Wards of the White Tower left alive, so still a decent amount of forces here. The Veterans of Osgiliath with their fully upgraded armour. The Fountain Guard, 72 Fountain Guard is a pretty decent tool to have as well. Vanguard of King Elisar retreating, so the defenders have managed to get a good amount of their forces off the front line. Here we can see the dismounted Knights of Anubis left behind in many ways. But they should be able to finish off what's left of Dorwinion. They have some Gondor archers also assisting them. As I said, not the best unit in melee, but they'll do as support. The Dorwinion general killed off. That was good timing. Routing units of river patrol over there, but yeah, Dorwinion obviously was always going to be quite difficult on this choke point, but at least they moved forward. So, can Lothlorien and Umbar wash away their shame? They are the two, after all, with by far the healthiest armies left. Can they attack Weathertop and be victorious? That is the question. And there's a lot of decent defensive units here, and of course the problem with a fortification like this, it's very difficult to attack up. Still a fresh unit of Gwythi Arthur, not the most damaging unit, but very difficult to kill. I don't think we saw units like the Kindred of Celeborn use their ammunition either, or the Watchers of the Golden Wood. But I don't think archers are really going to be all that useful for the attackers here. Like, look at the steepness of that hill. Like, they don't really have a good... I guess they could put their archers here and try to shoot up the hill, but it's going to be difficult. Like, the defenders are always going to be able to just shift behind terrain. Kindred of Celeborn getting shot. Vanguard of King Elisar moving forward. Eastron crossbows. And the Veterans of Osgiliath are here. What are they firing at now? They're going after the Valakith Axe Guard. Not a bad choice. They may have their armour upgrade, but they're still unshielded. And they're still a dangerous foe to fight. The AP would be very useful against the Gondorians after all. Meanwhile, the one melee fight that is still ongoing is the one that's over here, and the dismounted Knights of Anubis have proven to be a very strong unit in this battle. Real powerhouses. But they are up against pikemen, so I mean the pikes could just keep them at arm's length fairly indefinitely. But I think based on the way the fight is going, I think the Morroquendi pikes are not long for this world, to be honest with you. Still the pikes will fight on, however. I feel as though as soon as that fight is over I'm going to have to make a cut, because I imagine based on how slow they've been throughout the entire fight, Lothlorien and Umbar are unlikely to change their ways now and suddenly be quick. Eldraine archers getting shot by these Lorenan archers, but it's not the easiest shot for them. I think most of those arrows are actually hitting the cliffside. Some of them are finding their mark though, but of course the Eldraine archers, good armour, albeit against their elven brothers. Quite a few of those arrows are actually hitting. Good damage as well. Algrondas Legion doing what Umbar has done throughout this entire battle and diving behind the cliff. In this case it's a little bit more understandable though, as they're not ready to yet move in force. But it will probably have to be Umbar taking point. They of course have slightly more durability in that sort of situation than Lothlorien, I would say. Morroquendi Pike's defeat still seems certain as the dismounted Knights of Anubis continue to clean up what's left of Dorwinion. They're going to send over reinforcements to try and help Dorwinion out? I don't think so. Umbar's just... well, it's possible they don't even notice this, to be honest. I've said it before, but I do really like how Dorwinion used the sort of... almost looks like a thorny vine for their glaives. Very thematic. Victory is a distinct possibility. It's going to be quite a while before they actually manage to fully finish off the Morroquendi pikes. The very nature of pikes makes them quite a lengthy opponent to fight. You can see here, of course, the defenders taking up their position on the top of the hill. This does remind me a little bit of that battle on the Witch King's Sanctum a couple of days ago, where ultimately the defenders were the ones that were forced to charge down the hill because the attackers simply refused to move in. I feel as though that's not going to be the case here, because the attackers ultimately still have a pretty hefty numbers advantage, as you would expect in a 5v3 at this stage, to be honest with you. So it's going to be difficult, I think, for the defenders to come back from this and win it. Now, the Morroquendi pikes may very well be saved here, as finally some reinforcements are on their way over, and that will be enough to finish off the dismounted Illuminous Knights. What is that echoey sound effect coming from the units? Sounds weird, almost like there's distortion. Alcarondas Legion coming over in force. Will Umbar charge in? They will. They won't just sit here and observe. And with that many Alcarondas Legion coming in support, especially with a charge, that should be the end of Arthedain's resistance out here. But it was a very bloody one. Dorwinion are all but dead. They still have those pikes, so they can at least say they were a part of the attack on Weathertop itself, rather than just the plateau around it, but defeat seems almost certain. Yeah, and I would say with the manpower that Umbar and Lothlorien have left, certainly the attackers should go on to win this. It's not as if there's units like the Witchers or Demons of the Desert or Blacklock Engineers waiting at the top of the hill. So yeah, I would say that the attackers probably should go on to win this, but we'll see. We shall see. If they send their units in waves that are too small, then the defenders could very well take this home. We've already seen Umbar and Lothlorien actually make that mistake in this battle already. I may have been harsh on Lothlorien and Umbar, to be fair, but I definitely didn't approve of their tactics earlier on in the fight. We'll see if the sacrifice of their allies to save them manpower proves to be worthwhile, but I think I will make a bit of a cut here actually, because well, actually no. Eastron crossbowmen are making their way forward, so we may have a bit of a skirmish on our hands. Here we go, Elder Runway archers are going to be firing into the Eastron crossbowmen. Really nasty position they've got as well, shooting right into the heart of the Eastron crossbow there. Killing off several of them and then diving back behind the cliffs. And I feel as though that is a problem that the attackers have had throughout this entire battle, at least Umbar and Lothlorien have. They've been so eager to try and skirmish the defenders down. That is not going to be something which the defenders are going to be eager to let them do at all in this situation. It's going to be very difficult for them to do so, I think, if the defenders play their cards right. There's a lot of archers. Yeah, I'm going to make a cut here because it's going to take the attackers, I can already tell it's going to take the attackers a million years to get into a position where they're genuinely attacking the summit. So I'll make a cut here and we'll rejoin when a real battle begins. So I suppose this does count as a real battle, and it would have to be the defenders being the aggressors once again, wouldn't it, as these Lorenand archers getting into position alongside the Eastron crossbowmen. But they're immediately going to be sent scuttling back from whence they came as the defenders come charging down the hill, forcing the archers to run back the other way. They're going to try and get back into position now to shoot into the backs of the defenders. I'm sorry, I have to back the defenders in this situation. I really hope the defenders go on to win this, because I just cannot abide by the tactics which the attackers have used this time around. Like, it's just not something I can approve of. Dunedain Rangers firing away. Still just trading blows back and forth. The Lorenand archers, once again, they're going to retreat, seeing themselves outmatched in terms of the skirmish. Dunedain Rangers. And once again, we're in a situation very similar to the Witch King's Sanctum, where you're the attackers. The onus is on you to attack, especially in this situation where you should. Yeah, you do. You have a 1% advantage, which for the attackers in this stage of the game is very, very nice to have. You should be the ones to move forward. It should not. The onus should not be on the defenders to be the aggressors in this situation. But who knows? I think I should make actually another cut here, because I think it's fairly obvious here that the attackers are going to try and do this for a long period of time before eventually they're forced to sort of throw in the towel and actually attack the summit. Finally, we have some life and some movement after another excruciating period of very depleted units of archers trying to play tag with one another. We have a genuine assault, and Umbar and Rune are going to be leading the way with the Balakathak's Guard, the Scion Rim, what's left of the Carmel's Chosen. I imagine what's left of Rune will not last too long in this situation, but they've certainly been one of the more courageous of the attackers in this particular battle, and now we shall see how well the defenders can hold up in this particular situation. So you can see there are still some Dunedain Rangers still alive, and they should have a pretty good shot here into the side of this attacking force. The Gwaiti Arthan's still here, there's some Noritino warriors, Axemen of Lasarnak are here. Are the Rangers going to fire? I think so. This is a pretty good defensive line, honestly, as well, though. The Vanguard of King Elisar are here, but also it's shored up with Fountain Guard, Veterans of Osgiliath, the Numinous Gate Guards, a lot of good Phalanx units. The Gwaiti Arthand are also going to be a very effective unit on the front line, just because of how tough they are to kill. And we shall see. I mean, if this assault is broken up fairly quickly, it could be bad for the attackers here. I mean, you can see that there are still quite a lot of elves down here, including some Corsair crossbowmen as well. Kindred of Caliborn scuttling their way forwards. Lorenan spears, Lorenan archers still trying to skirmish, but they really don't have a very good shot at all. Dunedain Rangers sort of biding their time, I think saving their ammunition, I think sensing the fact they can probably win this fight anyway. The Harbingers of Castamere are on the front line though. It's probably not a good thing here. Again, I'm reluctant to sort of zoom in on this fight, because if the Rangers start shooting, that could be all the excuse the game needs to crash. Keep an eye on those Rangers. Meanwhile, this front line holding up very well. The heavy armour of Arthedain and Gondor offset by the melee prowess of Imladris. But there are these elite Umbar forces on the front line, and I'm not sure whether the defenders have enough left in the tank to withstand all of the units that the attackers have left. Eldraenway archers. There are still those Athelian Rangers as well. Like, they need to use these Rangers to good effect if they're going to win this battle, I think. They need those ranged units to do some work for them. Some Corsair crossbowmen are over there. Axemen of Lasarnak, like the AP, will be useful against these Black Numenorians. Arthedain Marksmen trying to get into position. All of these archers trying to get into a good position to just line up a shot right down the ranks of this front line. They need to do it sooner rather than later, though, otherwise they will lose too many of their infantry units. So I think the time has come for them to actually start shooting. Here come the Kindred of Caliborn trying to shoot their split shot arrows in. A lot of them are missing, however. A few of them are finding their mark, but enough of them are missing to the point where it's the defenders will probably be quite pleased with that turn of events. The Dunedain Rangers are now in position and they're going to try and shoot. I think the Kindred of Caliborn are actually going after them. You can see there, though, how much power and accuracy is lost when you arc the arrows like that too much. Victory on this side seems like a distinct possibility for the Gondorians. I can't imagine that's going to keep up, because a lot of their units over here are made up of Axemen, which tend to be a little bit more flimsy over time. Forward come some more elves, some Lorenan swordmasters. The Dunedain Rangers are sort of perpetually reloading, and I think that is a bit of a problem here. I think the defenders are running into the issue where only a few of these Rangers are actually firing. They need the whole unit to be firing and doing damage quickly if they are going to go on to win this battle, I think. Still, the front line is holding, but I just feel as though eventually one of the sections of the front line is going to start to waver, and as soon as that happens, the whole line is going to start to get dismantled, I think. How many units do the attackers still have? I mean, to be fair, not that many now that I look at it. Actually, looking at this, they still have some units way back down here, some Lorenan Axemen. I mean, it's not much, is it? It really is not much. We shall see. Kindred of Caliborn are trying to shoot in here, but I think they're actually getting just as much friendly fire as they are hitting these Eldarenway. Not brilliant for them. Meanwhile, there you can see the Gwaith the Arthand right at the centre of things. There's still a couple of Imladris sentries left alive. I mean, 23 Imladris sentries is still fairly significant. 8 Carmels chosen. These are the margins by which the battle will ultimately be won and lost. More split shots being loosed. Karen Amroth Rangers out of ammunition, but of all the Rangers, they're probably the best in melee. The Wardens of Elos Tyrion pull out those dual swords, but the Karen Amroth Rangers have got those single blades, which are, for the most part, better. The only thing an extra sword gives you is more melee defense, which is all well and good, but the two-handers give more damage. Still the split shots doing their thing. Now finding some good purchase on the Elder Enway archers, but the higher armour of Imladris allowing them to weather that storm a little bit better than most would be able to. Over here the balance of forces is now evenly matched, so Gondor and Arthane starting to lose a little bit of ground. The AP Axemen will be good for a time, but you would imagine that over time the attackers will simply be able to outlast the defenders in this particular situation. I think the announcer seems to agree with me as well. The Athelian Rangers are now going to be getting into position, which is sorely needed. They need these Rangers to do something, because the longer they leave it, the more likely a loss becomes. Kindred of Caliborn shooting into the Arthurdane marksman now. Now the Rangers are shooting right into the centre mass of that's exactly what they need. That could be a real turning point in this battle, because they have got a perfect shot. Not only that, but those Arthurdane marksmen are blocking the Kindred of Caliborn from hitting them. They need to get several more volleys like that right into the middle of this force, and they could go on to win this. The Rangers could be exactly what the defenders need to turn this battle in their favour. Lorenan Swordmasters moving forward. Arthurdane marksmen are there. There's Elder Enway archers. Looks like they're out of ammunition, so they can be used as infantry units. They're just sort of back here, and they'll be sent over to whatever side they need to go, because of course, technically speaking, it's two front lines, this one here and this one here. The ruins are in the way, so they need to be equidistant from both of them to be useful. Athelian Rangers, what's that down there? Watchers of the Goldenwood. That's always a good unit to have in the back pocket as well. It's still going to be difficult for the defenders, even with the Rangers now doing their thing. Corsair crossbowmen. 108 of them, but again, they don't really have the best of angles either. These Arthurdane marksmen still have some ammunition, contributing to the damage. Kindred of Caliborn shooting right into the front of that front line, but the Gwaith the Arthand are there, and they'll be able to absorb that kind of arrow fire all day long.
Only half the enemy force remains.
Lorenan archers are fighting. The heavy elven archers from Lothlorien. Yeah, I'm not sure at this point. I mean, if those Rangers can continue to bite into that front line, it's going to be difficult for the attackers to go on to win this. They still have Marchwards of the Wood, some Lorenan Axemen. The Watchers of the Goldenwood are an important one. That, I think, is the end of Rune. There are still some Morroquendi pikes on the front line, so yes, it is. So Rune are gone. They join Angmar. Unsurprising that they're the first two attacking armies to fall, considering how aggressive they were early on. Those defending archers continuing to do some damage. The Athelian Rangers in particular was such a good unit for Gondor to save for this late period of the game. Was sorely needed if they were going to come back into this and make this a contest. See over here just how much Umbar were in the ascendancy over here. They had a ton of units over here. Now the Rangers and the Arthurdane marksmen, to be fair, have both laid into them, and now Umbar almost completely gone. So it is going to come down to Lothlorien. Can they see the attackers over the line? I mean, this pretty much is the reason they must have been saving their army. They wanted to save it for the late game, and now is their opportunity to show me why that was a good idea. I personally still don't think it was. I think it was a terrible mistake. Dismounted Knights of Illuminus coming back, however, from some portion of the map, and they're going to charge up here. I mean, at the very least, they can be used to absorb a lot of the ammunition. Those Silverthorns sending them flying. Marchwards of the Wood are back down here. There's routing units from Lothlorien. Fighting hard on the front line here, the attackers, but I think they have been stopped dead in their tracks. Those Rangers have done the business, And now the solid front line centred on the Gwaith-Yarthand and the Wardens of the White Tower. I think it's going to be able to hold, you know. The defenders may very well be able to turn this one around and claim victory. I personally hope they do. I already made my affiliations in this battle quite clear, I think. Those Corsair Crossmen trying to get into a position where they can shoot, which may be pretty significant because they are now able to shoot, getting a good volley there into the Arthedae Marksman, and the Arthedae Marksman won't last long like that, so they're only going to have a few more volleys left in them before they are dealt with. But every kill is going to help here, and of course without the Arthedae Marksman there, the Athelian Rangers will be open to attack. And I don't know, I still think that the Athelian Rangers, a few more volleys are going to be necessary. They need to use up all their ammunition really, and then be used in melee as well. The Arthedae Marksman actually getting out of the way. Watchers of the Golden Wood now moving forward, but also over here, you can see there that the defeat is now a distinct possibility. This part of the front line is starting to waver a little bit, so this is where the Elder Enway archers will be committed. Still the defenders. The announcer doesn't think too highly of their chances. The Elder Enway archers need to be committed now, otherwise the battle could still get away from them. The Athelian Rangers are over here. I mean, the problem they have is they still have to deal with the Kindred of Caliborn and the Watchers of the Golden Wood in melee, which is going to be very difficult. There's also those March Wardens of the Wood, which have come forward as well, so more reinforcements to have to try and deal with. Karen Amroth Rangers feeling pretty good about their chances. I think the Elder Enway need to be sent in now, just to make sure this front line is as solid as possible. It's certainly a very close game. It's going to come down to just a 1 or 2%, I think, based on how this battle is going. But that 1% may very well be made up entirely of something like March Wardens of the Wood. Not March Wardens of the Wood, Watchers of the Golden Wood. Taking some damage here, though, from the Athelian Rangers. Multiple HP and decent armour, though, is going to stand them in pretty good stead here. These Axemen of Lasarnak have lasted a long time on the front line, actually. Without the ranger support they wouldn't have. I'm still pretty impressed, especially seeing as they're going up against units like Elves. I suppose this is where their 2 layers of armour upgrades do come into play, and now with the Elder Enway archers shoring up the line, the front line will live to fight another day. The Watchers of the Golden Wood retreating back down the hill, that could be a really key factor, because honestly at this point Watchers of the Golden Wood are probably more valuable to you as infantry. On the front line, if you sent them in over here, they would easily be able to overpower the Elder Enway archers. They're so good, the Watchers of the Golden Wood, at being archers and infantry, and they're needed now on the front line. Like, the March Wardens of the Wood are not the answer here. And of course, I mean, I suppose he's trying to avoid the range of fire, but at this point you don't really have the luxury of doing that. Like, the terms of the engagement have now been dictated to you. You're in here, you need to try and crack through this defensive line quickly before those archers do more damage to you. There goes the Umbar General, the Gwaith-Yarthand, just continuing to be beasts on the front line. They're so difficult to kill, the Gwaith-Yarthand. Like, they don't do their killing all that quickly, they're not very damaging, but they're practically bulletproof. The best elven armour that there is, the best elven shields, the best spears. What more could you ask for? The Athelian Rangers still getting volleys in and amongst the attacking forces here. Still those crossbow corsairs, and still the Kindred of Caliborn trying to fire away. Trying to kill off those Arthedae marksmen. At this point, I think the Arthedae marksmen probably would be best used as trying to absorb as much of that ammunition from the Kindred of Caliborn as they possibly can. They must have already gotten their fill of kills. Trying to dump what's left of their arrows into the attackers. The Athelian Rangers still here, who have been such an important part of this defence. Without them, I'm certain that the defenders probably would have already lost, to be brutally honest with you. Absolutely wild. I don't know. Where do those Watchers of the Golden Wood go? Are they in melee now? They are, which is good to see. I mean, finally you've sort of given up on trying to skirmish with the defenders. It's only taken until the 52nd thousandth frame But finally Lothlorien is throwing caution to the wind and sending in some more units in melee. Again, I may have been just a little bit too harsh on Lothlorien and Umbar with my commentary here, but I feel as though it needs to be said. They were far too passive in the early game, and their allies paid the price for that, and ultimately they didn't. I'm not sure they'll quite have enough manpower to actually see this battle through. I mean, it's possible that, you know, on the back of the Watchers of the Goldenwood, they might have the ability in melee to just win this, but I'm not convinced. They still have some Fountain Guard here, some Swordmasters. Are there any Wardens of the White Tower? 13 of them. There's still so many Gwaith the Arthand here. Eldraenway Archers as well. There's also the fact that they would then have to deal with the Athenian Rangers in melee. I think this is it. I think the defenders are going to win this battle, and I think well deserved as well. The defenders defended from the front, defended every angle on the plateau to the best of their ability before retreating up to the very defensible position here at the summit of Weathertop. Veterans of Osgiliath still alive, which is impressive as well. Still some Numinous Gate Guards in here. 48 Loran-armed Axemen. Ooh, is that the Rangers out of ammunition? Nope, they still have their bows. They're just going to move a little bit closer, trying to get a better shot. Yeah, the announcer. He now all of a sudden rates the defenders' chances to go on to win this one, and I would certainly agree with him. You can see here the Gwaith the Arthand are pushing forward, disrupting the attacking formation. And there the Rangers picking off what targets they can. So yeah, the defenders, they are going to win this one. And what a battle it was. And I think well deserved. I feel as though, you know, I was a bit grumpy earlier on in the fight, to be honest with you, with how I was criticising Lothlorien and Umbar in particular. But I don't think it was entirely undeserved, like I said. I do feel as though passivity got the better of both of the players there, especially Lothlorien, I have to say. Like Lothlorien, it was, at the very least, Umbar was close enough to the point where if a big gap appeared, I think they would have charged in. I still feel as though they should have engaged sooner. But Lothlorien sort of retreated back to that farmstead, set up their army all nice and neat, and then effectively stood there and watched as Rune and Angmar got torn asunder by all three of the defending armies. Like Gondor, Arthedain and Imladris all helped one another very nicely. And you can't really say the same about the attackers, and for that reason alone, for reasons of teamwork, I would say that it would be a well-deserved victory for the defenders. Still some Vanguard of King Elisar in here as well. That thick Gondorian plate serving them well in this battle, I suppose. It's got times 2 speed. Pretty much the entire battle is taking place within this one frame anyway. And it's going to take quite a while for them to kill off all of these Watchers of the Goldenwood anyway. They certainly won't go down too easily. Actually, with these Gwaith the Arthand and where they are, they may actually end up losing this battle against the Watchers now. There's Haldir. He's doing his best. Still those Loran-armed Swordmasters as well, although they're being overwhelmed at this point. An interesting battle. I'm glad to see that we got to see this map though. It's kind of an interesting one, with the primary sort of fortification being like slap bang in the middle, really. What was that? Nope, Lothlorien's still fighting on. But yeah, it's kind of interesting just because of how tall this feature in the middle of the map is. I mean, look at the elevation you have in comparison to the low ground. Absolutely massive. So it does look quite intimidating if you're on the attack. And I do feel as though the rules have to be that the defenders can't immediately just retreat up here, because otherwise it would be absolutely nightmarish to try and dislodge them. But as it was, nice to see another one of these new community maps being shown. Nice to see as well that, you know, with this new 4-core patch, I'm not crashing on every single one of them, which is always good to see. And here we can see another example of why the Watchers of the Goldenwood perhaps should have been committed to the melee sooner, because they are not going down without a fight. It even says victory is still a distinct possibility for them, which is amusing. Of course, that will not turn out to be the case in the end. There's simply too many defenders at this point to try and hack and slash their way through, especially when it's elite Gondorians and elite Imladris forces. It's just going to be too much for Haldir and his boys. But a brave effort here in the late game, at least, by Lothlorien. But ultimately the mistakes of earlier on were what cost the attackers here, and the 3 defenders victorious.
Our ally lies dead, slain by the enemy. We must help his men
Well,
avenge
there
him.
goes the Gondorian general.
Our army is tired.
He was so close to living through the entire battle as well, but ultimately he dies right at the end.
The enemy general flees like a
And there he goes.
press on. Bring the spirit of it up.
What do they have left then? Don't think anything. Unless they're going to return? Or are they going to admit defeat? I guess they're going to admit defeat here, but yeah. Very nicely played by the defenders, I think. The attackers just a little bit too passive
Our soldiers
early
have
on.
fought and died well today.
And there we go. A very nice battle indeed, again on one of the new community maps. Nice to see. Thank you to I Don't Want It for sending me this battle replay. It was a very nice one indeed. My doppelganger and Gondor getting a huge amount of kills, which is to be expected. Arthedain were definitely more of the supporting army with sort of more numbers, more basic units just for holding the line. Whereas Imladris and Gondor certainly had the flashier units. Rune getting the most kills for the attackers, which is not too surprising either because of the crossbows, the rangers getting some good shots, as well as, of course, the Dragon's Breath. But let's see what did the damage for Arthedain. Having a look at some of these kills. 316 on a unit of Arthedain marksman, which is very impressive. One of the units of rangers not doing very well, but the other one getting over 250 kills, which is decent in a defensive siege like this. Maybe not as high as we have seen in the past, where some can break 1,000, but 250 is still nothing to be sneezed at. Several units breaking 100 as well, including one of the dismounted Knights of Annúminas, a very strong point of their front line. And then both units of Dunedain Peacekeepers early on, when the initial waves of trash from Rune and Angmar were coming forward, they really cleaned up against them before ultimately being crushed underfoot by a bigger wave. But then, of course, Gondor and Imladris came over to bail Arthedain's defence out, which is good. That's exactly what you want to see from a good teamwork. Yeah, it was a very nicely constructed defence, and the attackers they didn't have the communication, I think, to really make it work. Like, when your allies are moving forward and being aggressive as Angmar and Rune are, the decision has been taken out of your hands. If you leave them to die, you will go on to regret it in the late game, whether that's because the battle ends up being much closer, you still win, but it's much closer than it should have been, or in this case, where it ultimately ends up costing you the victory as a whole. So yeah, I mean, equal parts. I mean, the defenders, I think, deserved it because of how well they set out their defence, but equally, I think the attackers ultimately, it was a deserved loss in the end, purely because, it was miscommunication. You could easily say as well that Rune and Angmar, maybe they should have held back until, everyone was ready to move in. But I feel as though, based on the way that Umbar was hanging around and based on how Lothlorien was hanging around, they were always going to wait for the other three factions to take the bullets for them early on. And ultimately that didn't end up paying off for them in the end. So yeah, big thank you to I Don't Want It. Very good battle of high quality. Nice to see another one of the community maps again, as I said, which is why it got bumped up in the replay order. It's always good to see an all-new map, especially one that represents WEATHERTOP, one of the more iconic sites in Middle-earth, albeit with Medieval 2. There's only so much that we can do to actually represent what WEATHERTOP actually is. But yeah, nice to see another long siege as well. We had quite a lot of really long sieges lately, and I think that is going to continue, because again, I keep meaning to do that enhanced Buer Saгаth map, which Eclipse sent me quite a while back at this point. That might be the next battle that comes out, I'm not sure. Again, it kind of depends on how much free time I have for recording, because long battles like this, I only have so many opportunities to actually record them at the moment, but we shall see. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you will join me for whatever is next.